Good morning, everybody. Welcome to those of you joining us both here in person and online. My name is Bob Kopp. I'm a climate scientist, and together with my colleague Kevin Lyon, I co-direct the new University Office of Climate Action. I'd like to start by thanking the team from our office, Angie Oberg and Katie Parrish, and our collaborators in University Academic Affairs, particularly Alice Hernandez, and the New Brunswick Chancellor-Provost office, and ITV, and Docs, and the dozens of speakers and volunteers who helped put this event together. Thank you. Rutgers University is a leading center of research and of learning. It's also a polity and an economic entity with a multi-billion-dollar budget, a community of about 100,000 people, and a footprint that spans the state of New Jersey. In September, President Holloway adopted Rutgers' first climate action plan, which calls for mobilizing Rutgers in all of its capacities to advance just and equitable climate solutions and to help our country achieve its Paris Agreement goal of decarbonizing by the middle of the century, a time frame consistent with limiting warming to well under 2 degrees Celsius. Towards that end, Rutgers' Climate Action Plan identifies 4 headline goals. First, decarbonizing Rutgers itself by 2040, including an interim target of reducing our emissions 45% by 2030. Second, working across our campuses and engaging with our host communities to advance comprehensive plans for just and equitable climate adaptation. Third, building a culture of sustainability that integrates climate action into academic research, teaching, outreach, engagement, campus life, and university policy across our campuses. And fourth, fostering the creation of educational opportunities for our students, economic opportunities for our host communities and New Jersey residents, and building a global model for cross-sectoral collaboration to advance climate action. Achieving these goals requires a whole university effort. Staff, faculty, students, and other trainees coming together. Our office's role is to provide institutional oversight, accountability, transparency, and clarity to these efforts that are distributed throughout the university, and to help kickstart efforts to advance the goals of the plan where necessary. We are here today to talk about climate action, not the climate crisis broadly, although as a climate scientist, I love to talk about that. But our metrics today are things like millions of tons of greenhouse gas emissions avoided, infrastructure and communities made more resilient, and scholarly works that builds upon and accelerates these on-the-ground efforts. We are here from across Rutgers to learn about climate action and associated scholarship already taking place across our campuses, and to identify new collaboration opportunities here at Rutgers. A few logistical notes. So that we can have an inclusive and welcoming event for all of our members and consistent with the Rutgers policy for events that bring students and faculty and staff together, please keep your masks on and do not while we're in the classrooms. And it's also the building policy not to eat in the auditoriums or classrooms. Please also make sure your devices are silenced, and especially some of you may be logged into the Hop-In platform at the same time you're in person. Please make sure your devices are silent if you're doing that. Thank you all again for joining us, and I'd now like to introduce somebody who really needs no introduction, my co-convener, New Brunswick Chancellor-Provost Francine Conway. Fran?
Thank you, Professor Kopp, to President Holloway, Vice Presidents Calcado and Mogi, Chancellor Cantor, Strom, and Tillis, and to our many distinguished guests, students, faculty, and staff. I'd like to open with a short quote. It says, "Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success." Coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. This famous quote was attributed to Henry Ford, and it remains relevant as we come together today to mobilize the university for climate transformation. I can think of no better cause that should bring us together than the grand challenge of climate change. and the dedication of our collective intellectual and civic-minded power towards climate action. Nothing could better fulfill our university's mission to uphold the public good through excellence in education, research, and service. I speak for all of Rutgers-New Brunswick when I say we are proud to show what excellence looks like in this effort. And I know my fellow chancellors speak for Rutgers-Newark, Rutgers-Camden, and RBHS in making the same pledge. In April, Rutgers-New Brunswick published its master plan, academic master plan, a grounded and ambitious roadmap that is focused on achieving the great promise of our community and to guide us towards fulfilling our potential as a world-recognized leader among institutions of higher education. The academic master plan is built on the excellence that we already embody, an excellence that has established us as a pioneer in interdisciplinary and community-engaged scholarship. And it will be a tool to bring about the change we embark on this effort to make our campus, local, and national communities sustainable. I look forward to a vigorous discussion of the ways our chancellor-led areas will continue to lead the way in climate action in the state of New Jersey, for the nation, and for the world. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce Rutgers University's president, Dr. Jonathan Holloway, whose commitment to our university's mission and whose vision of academic excellence, strategic clarity, and beloved community are the driving force of this effort. President Holloway.
Thank you, Fran, and thank you, Bob. And just for point of clarification, the fact that I'm not wearing a mask is not a political statement. It's a statement of complete exhaustion and forgetfulness. I'll confess, pardon my humanity in this regard. I came here confident I had everything I needed, and I was just going to bring my papers and left my backpack in the car where my masks are. So, quite seriously, if somebody has an actual, a free and previously not worn mask, I'll be happy to take it when I at the appropriate time. So, good morning, everybody. I really am thrilled to be here for all the reasons that I think you're thrilled to be here. Rutgers Climate Action Plan lays out a bold vision for the future of the university as a global leader in university climate action. The plan lays out a pathway for Rutgers to eliminate our carbon dioxide emissions by 2040 while making our campuses more sustainable and resilient. But its vision goes well beyond that. Its overarching goal is to mobilize our academic, operational, and economic capacities to advance equitable climate solutions and help the nation as a whole decarbonize in a time frame consistent with the international goals for stabilizing the climate. This requires making the climate crisis a central organizing principle for the university, an integral element of overall university strategy, not simply of university climate strategy. It requires that as we work to achieve institutional carbon neutrality and enhance institutional resilience, we do so in a way that creates opportunities for teaching, scholarship, and engagement. We must support curricular, co-curricular, and extracurricular student involvement in the transformation of our campuses. We must engage faculty and staff from across the university's full breadth of disciplines in this effort. Climate action can't just be a matter for those whose current scholarly focus is on climate change. Expanding collaboration around climate between the academic and operational arms of the university is one of the core purposes of today's convening. Rutgers has a strong foundation of climate leadership on which to build. For example, we were early leaders in campus solar, building our first large-scale solar arrays in 2009 and 2013. We're now in the process of building new solar facilities that will nearly double our capacity. We also have outstanding academic and research programs related to climate change involving more than 200 of our faculty. We're a national leader in community-engaged climate scholarship and you will hear about some of this incredible work throughout the day today. To meet the ambitious goals laid out in the Climate Action Plan, we must accelerate the work by leveraging all the strengths of the university in a coordinated effort. This is a big ask at Rutgers. We are a large, complex institution, the scale of a medium-sized city of nearly 100,000 people spread across the state. But this is, as much of it is a challenge, it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to serve as a laboratory of innovation for mobilizing our students, faculty, and staff. We can't achieve the goals of the Climate Action Plan purely through central planning. We need to amplify efforts throughout Rutgers. Toward this end, the Office of Climate Action is working to set up a network of climate action groups that will move climate solutions forward while bridging administrative silos. These groups are charged to develop implementation plans with clear, data-driven milestones to track our progress and hold ourselves accountable. Today is a significant step toward that effort, and this afternoon, you'll have the opportunity to engage with the leadership of these climate action groups. The Climate Action Plan also requires us to ask, how can we advance climate action beyond Rutgers in our local, state, national, and global communities? That is the focus of our second and third roundtables. The second roundtable will examine how we can prepare our students to be active and resilient climate citizens, helping lead climate action around the world and across sectors. The third roundtable will present some of the ways that Rutgers is bringing communities and businesses together to foster research-informed climate action while also creating opportunities for our students and faculty to gain valuable real-world experience. First, though, we have the first roundtable. So at this moment, I'll ask the participants of the first roundtable to join me on the stage. This conversation will focus on the overarching vision of Rutgers' Climate Action Plan, mobilizing our academic, operational, and economic capacities to advance just, equitable climate solutions and help achieve national net zero greenhouse gas emissions. To help us consider how we can leverage all the university's capacities to accelerate climate action, I'm joined by 5 people who are well situated to lead us toward these ambitious goals. Coming down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, sorry. To my immediate left is Tony Calcado, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. Proceeding in order, Antonio Tillis, Chancellor in Camden, and I think mask deliverer. I saw you have a, are you nodding at my mask? Oh, there it is, excellent. Fran Conway, Chancellor of New Brunswick, Nancy Cantor, Chancellor of Newark, and Brian Strom, Chancellor of RBHS. Let me transition very quickly. I want to thank you all for joining us for this first roundtable, Mobilizing for University Climate Action. The conversation will focus on the overarching vision of Rutgers' Climate Action Plan. Yes, okay, the first slide is up there. And I'm going to start off right away by I'll be inviting each participant along the way for some opening comments, and then we'll start the conversation here. So start off with Tony. To start us off, could you talk about the major investments IP&O is making in climate solutions, and what are your plans for the next 3 to 5 years?
So thank you, yes, and thank you to Bob, Kevin, Angie for inviting us here. I think that this is phenomenal and long overdue because these conversations seem in many ways to fall to the rear, and actually they should be at the forefront. So none of this is new to us, and in fact, many of us have been working on a university's commitment to climate action sustainability since the 90s, believe it or not. As a matter of fact, the university was one of the original signers, and I see Jeannie nodding, to the Talleries Agreement from Paris to reduce emissions in 1990, and we've had dedicated individuals working on these initiatives ever since. So we recognized in operations that these initiatives were and are, in addition to the benefits that it brings to society in general, there was a real benefit to our bottom line. There was a requirement, of course, to make some initial investment, but it benefited the university all around. And I think that institutional planning and operations was and continues to be all in. I am very happy to see the establishment of the Climate Action Office because it gives us the ability to work in a broader context, and it gives us some leadership. So thank you for your efforts as well. So a couple of the things that we've done, and then we'll talk a little bit about where we're going. So all of our new buildings and major renovations are built to the equivalent of the U.S. Green Building Council's LEED Silver rating. As of today, the university has built 11 buildings to this standard. Right here, the new chemistry and chemical biology building, and Weeks Hall, as a matter of fact. So all of our new buildings and major renovations are built to a minimum energy efficiency savings of 15% over those built to ASHRAE standards. The university presently has almost 10 megawatts of solar power and 30 megawatts of cogeneration. The cogeneration plants were recently upgraded, and that in turn cut our emissions by about 50%. Since 2009 as well, the university has reduced the carbon footprint by almost 360,000 metric tons. That's equivalent to 1,900 rail cars of coal, or 28 miles long, my colleague Mike Cornelius tells me. So the university publicly made a pledge to continue its sustainable efforts, and it will continue these sustainable efforts. We belong to a number of groups. We continue to belong to them. We are very active with the different groups, including the U.S. Green Building Council, the Association for the Advancement, of Sustainability in Higher Ed, the New Jersey Higher Ed Partnership for Sustainability, and of course, this group, the Climate Change Action. So we're very proud of that, and we continue to work towards the goals. Where are we going over the next few years? We are in the process of installing almost 15 megawatts of solar canopies throughout the university through a purchase power agreement. That's a $62 million investment financed through a third party. In terms of production, if you look at conventional generators, such as a coal plant, a megawatt produced equates to about the same electricity that a typical house or home of typically 650 homes, I should say. So our investment translates into almost 10,000 homes, or the equivalent of that. We're auditing over 100 buildings in this go-around for energy efficiency through our partners, PSE&G Energy Engineered Solutions Program, and there's a potential of a $75 million investment through our partners as well, and we look forward to that. We're putting together a program to meter every one of our buildings. Not everyone is metered. Some of them are on central systems. The reason we want to do that is so that we can get data to a very granular level so that we can put our resources in the right places as we continue marching towards carbon neutrality. We're looking into investing in a virtual solar PPA as well. We're looking at the electrification of our fleet, both vehicles and motor pool. My colleague Henry Velez, who's here, will lead a roundtable later today, I believe, which will get into some of the nitty-gritty of what that would look like. I am happy to take some thunder from him and tell you that our first EV cargo van is in the house, and mail will be delivered by that van starting soon, very soon. And we are redirecting the focus of institutional planning and operations, the planning piece of this especially. We are looking at what electric boilers, electric chillers throughout some of our major investments in order to, again, reduce that carbon footprint. And it's a little bit of a change from the way we've done business in the past, but I think one that's well worth it. So that is where we are and where we continue to be and where we would like to get to.
Thank you, Tony. Yes. As we move from operations to the chancellors, I think it's just an important, when you and I were talking about this, I can't remember when it was. We all know how time has collapsed during COVID. So at some point in our relationship, Tony and I were talking about this and remarking that this is not, and it echoes my earlier comments, this is not just an operations plan. and it's not an inexpensive plan. It's an important choice that really demands that we think about how we do business in a very different way. And that will come at some expense in terms of dollars to implement and build certain structures, as Tony just pointed out. But it will come at a literal and figurative expense of how we live our lives on a daily basis on our particular campuses, not just in operations, but within the Chancellor unit. So I'm going to use that as a bit of a framing to move on to the chancellors and start with Antonio, who, as you recall, is the chancellor in Camden. And I'm wondering, and this is a question that really is for all of the chancellors, if you could talk about your related work going on in your chancellor unit and where you would like to see both your unit and Rutgers as a whole go over the next 5 years. And so we'll start with you, Antonio.
Great. Thank you, President Holloway, and good morning to you all. As I begin to think about the importance of this conversation, the theoretical frame of a noted Brazilian scholar at the Federal University in Bahia comes to mind. And that theoretical term is called globalização. And what Livio Sansoni basically talks about is the interdependent nature between the global and the local. And I think that's what's framing our work in this space at Rutgers-Camden, in the sense that we are thinking globally as we act locally relative to Camden and South Jersey. So just to give you a few ideas about, and a few examples rather, of the work that is being done by faculty at Rutgers-Camden. In our chemistry department, Dr. Georgia Arbuncle-Keel has extended her research collaboration with colleagues here in New Brunswick to conduct research on microplastics in the Delaware River to gauge the impact of these contaminants on the food chain. She also has received significant support in order to do this work. Dr. May Few, who is a senior associate dean in our School of Nursing, is preparing a project to aid in the assessment of Camden residents related to health outcomes and related environmental as well as social factors. In our Center for Computational and Integrative Biology, Dr. Angelica Gonzalez and her students are studying how human activity has increased the amount of nitrogens and phosphorus in the atmosphere and how that increase is actually impacting our multiple ecosystems. Her fellow biologist, Dr. Amy Savage, brings students into the field to study the impact of climate and environment upon insects' life in the Camden area. Patrick Rosal in our English department and co-director of our Institute for the Study of Global Racial Justice addresses the issue of environment and inequity in his current project connecting race with ecological memory. Dr. Richard Mitchell-Filder in the Camden Business School is a national expert on the electric utility industry and its impact on the environment. Indeed, he serves as an advisor to the New Jersey Senate Environmental and Energy Committee. And in our law school, Professor Katie Kovacs has taken a leave from Rutgers to serve as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Land and Minerals Management in the Department of the Interior. Like virtually every post-industrial urban center in the nation, our host city, the city of Camden, faces environmental challenges. And again, as an anchor institution and a partner in the rise of Camden, we at Rutgers-Camden commit ourselves to aiding in this struggle for environmental justice. Last year, as an example, 6 illegal dumping sites across the city were cleaned up and transformed into community gathering spaces anchored by public art. This project, called A New View, was supported by a $1 million Bloomberg Philanthropies grant to the city. Rutgers-Camden was tapped as a lead partner in this project, as our Center for the Arts led the development of the public artwork and the reactivation of those formerly polluted spaces. The art installations helped to reorient public perceptions of Camden and the city's environment and engage residents in shifted attitudes and policies about illegal dumping in the city of Camden. This is work that our art center has been doing successfully for decades, leveraging local arts to transform blighted communities. Just last week, our Civic Engagement Office received an award from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection to engage Camden youth in efforts to safeguard the environment, to safeguard the environmental health of their particular neighborhoods. Our students perhaps understand it better than we, as they have also begun to mobilize. Our New Jersey PER chapter is active, as is our Environmental Action Coalition student organization. A new study abroad course is being developed to focus on the impacts of climate change in Puerto Rico, which faces some of the world's most pronounced effects of climate change. For us at Rutgers-Camden, we see this as an all-hands-on-deck moment for our institution as well as for our planet. We have a number of courses in place or under development that incorporate climate action into the curriculum, and I am proud of our faculty for developing these courses. I am certain that there will be more of this type of curricular development coming forward. But this is all about linking arms and working together, which seems to be the leitmotif as echoed by Fran, echoed by Tony, and others. During the oncoming months and years, I anticipate that our participation with local organizations and agencies will dig deeper into the space of climate action. As a university, we will have to develop policies and approaches to approximating how we, and understanding better how we do business in such a way that we are minimizing the impact on the environment, and also thinking about strategies in order to mitigate some of the damage that has already been done. So thanks to trusted colleague Tony Calcado, thanks to Kevin Lyons, Angela Oberg, Brian Ballantyne, and so many others. Thanks to their efforts, Rutgers has already taken measurable steps in order to reduce our waste and our impact on the environment. That work is happening on our campus, even as it is across the university writ large. Rutgers-Camden sees the opportunity to make a difference. We have the intellectual assets, we have the grit, we have the commitment and willpower to partner across the institution, across Rutgers-Camden, across South Jersey, as well as the state. So, President Holloway, those are my comments relative to your question.
Thank you so much. Now, in my position, I'm always given notes that I'm supposed to follow to make sure I don't go wildly off script. I'm going to go off script. Because I literally don't know what my colleagues are going to be presenting, and I'm told to offer brief comments after every response, at the risk of stepping on future toes, I'm going to move from one chancellor to another, and at the end sort of sum up generally what I'm saying. So I guess those are comments after. That's ironic. And in any event, Fran, let me turn to you next, and please share with us your thoughts about New Brunswick, its current status, and future vision for climate action.
Thank you, President Holloway. So Rutgers-New Brunswick has been a pioneer in interdisciplinary, community-engaged climate scholarship, with more than 200 faculty members at the Rutgers Climate Institute, the Rutgers Energy Institute, and the Institute of Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Sciences. Our faculty work to understand our planet, how humans interact with it, and how we can do so in a more sustainable and resilient manner. According to the National Science Foundation statistics, we're among the top 4 Big Ten schools in research activity in earth, ocean, and atmospheric sciences. Our faculty are leaders in intergovernmental panels on climate change, the National Climate Assessment, and climate initiatives within the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. Over the past decade and a half, we have engaged broad stakeholder networks in New Jersey in climate action. Stakeholders such as the New Jersey Climate Change Alliance, which is coordinated from the Rutgers Climate Institute and Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy. The Getting to Resilience program and Engage Research Initiative operated through the Jacques Cousteau National Equestrian Research Reserve, the New Jersey Climate Change Resource Center, and pioneering educational efforts like the Coastal Climate Risk and Resilience Graduate Program and the associated Climate Resilience Corps. We are well positioned for national leadership in this area through a new 5-year, $20 million, 12-university NSF project. It's a funded project. The Megalopolitan Coastal Transformational Hub, which Dr. Bob Kopp referenced, he is leading that effort. And it's working with communities in New York City, New Jersey, Philadelphia region to advance the fundamental science of how humans, coast, and climate change interact in urban areas, and to help communities in our area manage the risk created by these interactions. In terms of future vision, the Rutgers-New Brunswick Academic Master Plan is an ideal platform to marshal and launch our strategic planning efforts in this area. The Academic Master Plan is built on 4 pillars of excellence: scholarly leadership, innovative research, student success, and community engagement. And all these pillars support 4 central themes: interdisciplinary collaboration, social mobility, diversity, and service of the common good. Our university-wide commitment to climate action has relevance for each of these pillars and themes. For example, the scholarly leadership pillar, which reflects our commitment to elevate the scholarly leadership of intellectual communities, gives us an opportunity to come together and leverage our collective expertise to create interdisciplinary intellectual hubs that promote the development of curricula and other specialty subjects and studies in this area. Our priorities in innovative research, designed to strengthen Rutgers-New Brunswick capacity to solve grand challenges that reflect our commitment to common good, provides us with an opportunity to catalyze innovative research amongst our faculty and students through a campus-wide Chancellor-Provost challenge that supports not only the coming together of the intellectual community, but the working together to advance the science in this area. Engaging students in these experiential opportunities around research and community-engaged climate action brings our research and community engagement pillars to shape and curate signature learning experiences for our students. Also, service opportunities that will lead to the success of our students, and the student success pillar, which is the cornerstone of our plan. We will look for ways to support climate action in our 3-pronged structure for discovery, development, and implementation of new and existing projects to support our objectives. There will be local projects at the school and divisional level that will include not only our faculty and students, but equally important will be the inclusion of our staff. Through the Chancellor-Provost Challenge, which will be issued to the campus, transformative campus-wide initiatives will be generated by faculty, students, and staff working together. And finally, there will be administrative level initiatives that the Chancellor-Provost will advance in close collaboration with the President. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fran. Nancy, may I turn to you?
Thank you. So in keeping with Rutgers-Newark's overarching framework as an anchor institution, I want to repeat what Antonio said, and we didn't practice this, and that is that we recognize that the local work we do as an anchor institution really resonates globally and vice versa. And so our approach to climate impact intersects with a broader approach to racial equity, equitable economic development, educational opportunity, health equity, public safety, and environmental justice. And I'll talk a little bit about those different facets later. And in doing this work, it involves partnership, especially in the city of Newark, with anchor institutions that range across cultural institutions, arts institutions, educational, hospitals, corporate space, etc. So it's everybody on deck, if you will. But let me start, for example, with the notion that the publicly engaged scholarship that we do as an anchor institution in and of Newark has tremendous impact on climate and environmental justice in particular. So, for example, our faculty and students in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences are measuring toxins on a repeated basis in community gardens, in the soils around Newark, particulates in the air in Newark. We're looking at the effects of coastal climate change on urban areas like Newark and its surroundings. And I really want to emphasize that while we have an incredible cadre in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences and across the STEM fields doing this work, it's also our humanists, our public humanists, our artists, our criminal justice folks, and our public affairs folks who are really digging in here. And let me give one example. The Humanities Action Lab, which is located, has its home base at Rutgers-Newark, but is a national and international network of humanists who are teaming up with frontline communities and community activists on environmental justice issues to bring to bear a whole digital portrayal across the world, and our students in the Honors Living Learning community and our colleagues in Talking Eyes Media teamed up with our Ironbound Community Corp activists in the Ironbound in Newark to produce remarkable digital productions about climate change and its substantial effect in the Ironbound in Newark, both in terms of industrial pollution, water pollution, earth and environmental work generally. But what was so important here and what they add is that the public humanists and the artists doing this and the student voices doing it involved interviewing local families, generations of families in the Ironbound, and Tony knows this one well, as to the intergenerational pass down of environmental justice issues and toxin issues. So that I want to put a sort of historical framework on that. I'm looking at Jack Chen right here, who will talk later, the work that he and his students and colleagues have been doing with the Lenape and the ways in which environmental pollution has really degraded intergenerationally the health and economic equity and social justice for those communities. Now, all of this work involves students directly, and I think that's critically important because we see ourselves as producing the next generation of change agents, and particularly those with a racial equity lens, with an economic equity lens, with a sense of social justice as it weaves through questions of climate impact. So we're looking, for example, we create in the high schools in Newark, in the STEM labs, we've created solar suitcase projects that not only install solar suitcases throughout the United States, but in international communities around the globe. We're looking at with our community college partners in Alec Gates and Ashaki Roof's Bridges to Baccalaureate and Garden State LSAM program, looking at the way in which we can produce a whole generation of students who transfer from the Hispanic serving county colleges in New Jersey to Rutgers-Newark, a Hispanic serving institution, to think about the local communities that they all come from and the ways in which we can tap the questions of environmental justice in those communities. We've been mapping for City Hall. Those students have been mapping park toxins in the parks all around Newark and the areas, as well as in the gardens that are the vacant lots that are being turned into gardens. So when I think about our student activists, I want to obviously give a shout out to our Student Government Association's Environment Committee, really working hard on questions of reducing food waste, to NJ Perg, as Antonio mentioned. They just did a plastic week of action that had huge uptake. But I also want to talk about this as an opportunity to team up, for example, with our operations folks. And we've been looking, we have an incredible food pantry. They've been teaming up with the Urban Agricultural Cooperative and looking at local food supplies and what that means. Gourmet dining is actually a nationwide really a leader, I would say, in teaming up with local food production sources, reducing waste, trayless operations, some of the obvious nitty-gritty things that one can do. And then finally, I want to really emphasize our anchor collaborations. Now, we are part of, and I co-chair the Newark Anchor Collaborative, which has 17 large anchors. RBHS is one partner there. We have Prudential and PSE&G and United Airlines and a whole variety of arts and collaborators from around the city. And all of us have gotten together, and good old Kevin Lyons over there is steering so much of this process for us, to think about what it means to procure locally, for example. So if you think about creating a local supply chain model, and Kevin's done lots of mapping of this, so I'm sure he'll talk about that work later. What it really means is doing two things that we think are absolutely critical to the future of Newark and cities like Newark. One is reducing greenhouse gas emissions by having local suppliers who are supplying the work, the sources that we all, the large anchors, buy from. But in addition, it is undergirding the health and viability of those local diverse suppliers themselves. And they then turn into the organizations, as Kevin has said many times, that turn around and hire locally. So when you hire locally, you're also reducing emissions, you're reducing commuters, you're also leading to equitable economic development, which is a huge commitment on our part and the part of all the Newark Anchor Collaboratives. The Anchor Collaborative has made a very clear, overarching statement towards racial equity, which for us will really mean the kind of local sourcing, local hiring, and really thinking about things like local food production, teaming up with PSE&G, as Tony mentioned earlier, but in this context, it's to train Newarkers for greener jobs. So there are all kinds of opportunities to have the anchor work intersect with climate impact. And that's where I want to end in terms of the future. What I see as the future is for our climate action working group to take every piece of our anchor institution work, which goes from affordable housing to public safety work to the arts and the voice, the civic voice that can be rendered through the arts, to thinking about educational access and equity. When we think about equitable economic growth in Newark, we can weave climate impact in every piece of equitable growth. So just to give one example, our Newark Public Safety Collaborative that we host, which is a citywide collaborative about public safety, has focused on using Joel Kaplan and Les Kennedy's risk terrain modeling, has focused on not looking at people who commit crime, but looking at places where crime is committed. Well, when you think of that, that means an analysis, for example, of vacant lots. Turning vacant lots into green, sustainable places can be a way in which we marry public safety and the kinds of climate impact that we have. Similarly, they just did a whole project on the number of cars that are left with their engines going while people go in to buy anything in Newark. And those cars get robbed, so that's how it feeds into crime analyses, but it also feeds into admissions, right? So if we can reduce the number of cars that are literally left idling, we can reduce the kinds of greenhouse gas emissions that happen. So my main point here is that what might seem like anchor work that is separate from climate change is actually totally intertwined and interwoven with having climate impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Brian, you're up.
Thank you, Jonathan. For RBHS, we inhabit really two distinct but interrelated spaces regarding climate change, and I'm going to talk about each separately. First, our 8 schools and multiple research centers and institutes are a significant component, of course, of the university, spread out across multiple geographic campuses, but especially in Newark and New Brunswick. So we'll be joining with our Chancellor Unit colleagues, as you've heard about, and central administration partners across the university seeking solutions to how we minimize climate impact in key mission areas like education and training, laboratory research, side by side with the rest of our colleagues. We're really fortunate that our working group will be led by 2 internationally published thought leaders at the nexus of these 2 forces, Dr. Soko Setaguchi of Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, who probably is one of the few people in the country to have received NIH funding on the effect of climate change on health, and Dr. Phil Democritou of EOSI, the Environmental and Occupational Health Science Institute, and our School of Public Health. Second, of course, our other mission is patient care. Rutgers Health and our hospital partners, University Hospital in Newark and Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health, are a significant component of the healthcare delivery system in New Jersey. And this is where, together with our health system partners, we can have a net impact on climate action on yet a larger scale. I see RBHS contributing meaningfully both to the understanding of the impact of climate change on health, as well as the impact of healthcare on climate change. The impact of climate change on human health has been well studied for decades. As healthcare professionals, obviously we worry all the time, whether you're talking about heat, whether you're talking about pollution, other such effects, and people getting sick from it accordingly. We're aware of what our warming planet is doing to our patients in terms of heat-related conditions caused by extreme temperature fluctuation, exacerbations of asthma and lung conditions, the emergence of vector-borne illnesses, natural disasters, and so on. Our climate leaders are among the very few scientists, again, who have received NIH funding to investigate the effects of climate on health. However, only very recently, we, not just locally, but as a field, are becoming more aware of how the delivery of healthcare in our current episodic-based system of care is impacting climate change. The healthcare sector now represents 18% of the US economy and produces 553 megatons of carbon emissions each year, or a remarkable 8.5% of all national carbon emissions come out of healthcare, roughly equivalent to the national emissions output of Indonesia. Healthcare delivery in general, and in particular in hospitals and operating rooms, is very energy intense. Lighting, ventilation, surgical technology, the gases we use, all consume vast quantities of energy. Pharmaceuticals, disinfecting agencies, anesthesia gas all produce significant emissions. Our hospitals often don't even have recycle bins. Unsustainably vast quantities of medical waste are also generated. A saying is that the only thing that we don't throw out in the operating room is the patient and the surgeon. In response, we are in the process of creating a new Center for Climate Change, Health, and Healthcare jointly with our clinical partners, RWJ Barnabas Health. So unusual joint academic and clinical center like that, which we are about to launch with considerable enthusiasm on both sides. The center will address climate change and the impact of climate change from the patient's perspective, the community's perspective, and healthcare perspective, with the goal of conducting clinical and population-based research relevant to climate change, health, and healthcare. Also goals of educating and preparing current and future biomedical health science professionals, patients, and communities to combat the climate crisis, and designing and implementing sustainable and resilient climate-friendly healthcare practices. And of course, disseminating these findings within our own patient-facing units throughout our clinical partners and to the industry beyond. One last note, it's been demonstrated that sustainable healthcare is lower cost healthcare, and that if all US hospitals adopted best practices on energy use, waste management, device reprocessing, and operating room kit reformulation, $5 billion in savings could be obtained in 5 years and $15 billion in 10 years. So this is not widely known or accepted, however. So moving to climate sustainable practices will not cost more in healthcare, it'll save money in healthcare, which of course will help motivate our healthcare partners. We are very excited to be a part of this Rutgers-wide effort. We're looking forward to the benefits of this initiative that it'll bring to us, our patients, and to the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, we were supposed to engage in a roundtable conversation here, but I actually want to, have you ever read the book, Give a Mouse a Cookie? Give administrator a microphone, you just don't know what's going to happen. But the comments were very generative. I mean, I took all kinds of notes here, glossing over them very quickly. We heard collectively how this is a local story, whether it's articulated as an anchor or racial justice kind of project, or local story as far as campus-city interactions that involves anything from English departments, art communities, to chemistry, law, and medicine. This is a research project in bringing together our research institutes across the university that is also can be built into how New Brunswick specifically is reorganizing how it does business on a regular basis. It is an opportunity to engage student activists and heighten their understanding of the consequences of different actions. I recall that when the university had divested from fossil fuels as an investment portfolio, students were celebrating and went, that's fine, this is what they were asking for. I'm like, you do realize this will become an inconvenience for you at some point because of the convenience built into fossil fuels in terms of the way our culture operates. I fully support the inconvenience, but the students need to be aware that this will have consequences. And so there's a way that education, as far as their, the student activism, is a really critical part of the process. And lastly, looking at the healthcare system, that while climate action is all about planetary health, we also know it's about human health. We know they're intertwined, of course, but there's a real opportunity we heard in Brian's comments about the health of healthcare delivery itself, and how there could be incredible positive consequences, but that will have to require changing some mindsets along the way. And you're right, dollars will talk, and this is how people look for opportunities. I think there's incredible opportunities in green economics, and we'll see how hard it is to convince other people. I want to move actually to the questions. That was the roundtable. I just did it. We're moving to the questions, and these are I'll try to get to a couple of them. Questions that come from the Student Advisory Board to the Office of Climate Action. This is a group of graduate and undergraduate student leaders from across all 4 chancellor units. They serve as liaisons to the student community to ensure that student voices are being heard. And I was given 3 different, well, there are 3 bullet points. There are multiple questions within each, but I'm going to start with one of them right here, which is the final question, which is sort of wrapping things up in a way, but we make it to the other ones. Like faculty and staff at Rutgers, the student community has felt the impacts of the pandemic deeply. I read this as a pandemic exhaustion question. And this is to the 5 of you, how can university leadership welcome the student community to engage with climate action at Rutgers, knowing that we are all dealing with the exhaustion and trauma of the past 2 years? So it's a question about immediacy, recognizing what we've all been through, and how do we get them to rally, as it were, and encourage their engagement in constructive ways as we all recover from this pandemic. In any particular order. Looks like you're ready to go, Tony.
Yeah, maybe I can start with that from a little bit of a different perspective. I think that that this is a great opportunity to actually get away from that pandemic exhaustion and down a different path. I think it's we have always engaged with our students. Nancy talked about that a little while ago. I know, Fran, you talked about that as well. We actually have many, many meetings on climate change, climate action, sustainability with all of our students across all of the campuses with respect to with respect to student government, typically subcommittees, and sometimes outside of committees within student government that just have interest and they want to talk about it, and they want to propose an idea or whatever it might be. I think now is the time. They're tired of what they've been through over the course of the last 2 years. I'm tired of what we've been through over the course of the last 2 years. It's an ideal way to shift the conversation. It's an ideal way to put the focus on something else, and I think it's the right time, and we have the ability as leaders and administrators to be able to tap into that to make that happen.
If I could just add on Tony's point, I mean, I think I think there's a real opportunity here to shift from feeling beleaguered to feeling active and impactful. I know we're seeing this in Newark because the disparate impact on so many of our students' families of the pandemic ripples its way through to health equity, to questions of that really directly relate to questions of environmental justice and questions of impact, losing jobs, thinking about the ways in which we can retool for greener jobs, the kinds of things that we can get our students directly involved in. But I think the university has a responsibility in this regard to not have it be an add-on for students, to really figure out the way in which we weave this into the curriculum directly. So we weave it into work-study jobs, we weave it into internships. We think about things that not only allow students to be the change agents in our community and of our communities, but also to think about their future as activists and as in their careers. And we really don't make this, I always worry that, especially for some reason, with both racial equity activism and climate activism, it gets to be something you do on the side, that you do, and that we cannot do as we come out of a pandemic. We have to have it be something that resonates throughout and is interwoven throughout the career of a student at Rutgers-Newark, at all of our campuses.
Yeah. Nancy, I could not agree more in the sense that sitting here thinking about the notion of climate action, and oftentimes that engenders disciplinary areas that become just the staple. And I think in having these conversations with students, particularly as they are dealing with, and as we are as well, the aftermaths of the severity of the pandemic, and as we move through the pandemic, I think it gives us an opportunity to have a different type of conversation with them about the impact, about what they're going through, about how their mental health as it relates to climate action, about the multiple insecurities that we have discovered that our students have as a result of going through the pandemic. So I too, Tony, see this as an opportunity to pretty much raise our game and how we deal with our students, with experiential opportunities for them as well as curricular opportunities, as Nancy has stated, that really tie into the conversation of climate action and breaking down those denotative dividers relative to the disciplinary transforming into the interdisciplinary nature of this conversation.
Just to weigh in, agreeing with my colleagues with a slightly different perspective, as Jonathan and Tony undoubtedly are tired of hearing me say, the pandemic's not going away, it's just in a different phase. We will learn to live with it. We are learning to live with it. It's in another phase. On the other hand, to quote my wife, I'm tired of hearing you talk about it. So the climate change is really an opportunity to change the subject. To really change from what will be our baseline for the rest of existence to something that we can now move on and do something about in a different way. And it's an opportunity to distract people in action for something which is really incredibly important, and certainly, I'm talking about the students, incredibly important to our students. So it's an opportunity to have my wife have me shut up. So.
Yeah, I just want to add to what was discussed, sort of bringing a more administrative point of view to this conversation. For us to be able to reward our students and for it to not be an add-on, we also have to incentivize our faculty. Right. So we're looking at how do we, currently there's a committee in New Brunswick that's looking at what is the definition of engaged scholarship, how do we incentivize that, how do we reward that, what are the metrics, because the faculty that are doing this work are engaged with the community and they have to feel supported, they have to feel rewarded and acknowledged for the work that they're doing, and then the students have to be a part of that. And I'm agreeing with you so much, Nancy, about infusion, that climate can be infused into the curriculum, infused into co-curricular activities. So it's not an extra thing that folks are doing. And also agree with the mental health benefits of feeling that you can make a change, that you can make a difference. So much that we have, no control over, like the pandemic, but we can do something about our environment.
Thank you. I'm going to give you I'm not asking this question, I'm preparing all of you. So in the last minute, I'm going to do a speed round, and I want you to tell me, with your allotted 12 seconds, what is the most important thing that you've said this morning? I'm thinking about really what we can highlight as we walk off as this panel wraps up. Very quickly, so that's just put that in the back of your noggin. One of the other questions, I'm paraphrasing here, the students sent in. Brian, you mentioned the desire for us to change the topic to get back to conversations that we were having before the pandemic. And one of the first questions points out that, people have been working on climate change. In fact, Tony opened up with this for a very long time in different kinds of ways. But the pandemic necessarily was a moment of incredible distraction of mortal importance, of course. But how do you envision, it doesn't have to be all of you answering, but if you do, just be quickly, how do you envision helping students in particular re-engage on these issues? Like finding out, this predates my arrival. I've only been here during the pandemic. So I don't know what was happening on our campuses, in our units, prior to the pandemic on these kinds of issues. So if you have some connections, some of you have longer memories than others, since Antonio just joined us as well, about how do we, whether it's the word incentivize or re-engage or release the energy in our students and tap into it. I'd love to hear any constructive suggestions.
Okay, I'll jump in. One of the things that's planned in New Brunswick and has been happening, we're just planning to scale it up, is these interdisciplinary hubs where our students have been working in these little pods with bringing different disciplinary perspectives to solving a problem. And we have this iteration of this format, this student learning format in School of Engineering, School of Business, the arts. We have it across many of our academic units. And so I think continuing that and picking climate as a focus could be really useful. It doesn't add to the burden, it utilizes a pre-existing structure, and it gives our students a way to collaborate.
Any other quick ideas?
Yeah, if I could just add to that, because it's very similar. For example, our Honors Living Learning community, which creates a social justice minor, the coursework has, and Kevin and Ashaki Ruth taught a course, for example, and Jack has taught within HLC, and that's using the social justice minor as a sort of interdisciplinary framework to weave into the curriculum, and that immediately engages them in the anchor work within the city of Newark. And so it crosses all the boundaries, and for me, that's the critical piece there.
I think I'd want to touch a little bit too on flipping that the other way. Our students are so phenomenally engaged that I can't, from my experience over the years, how many times they've come to the table or they've approached us in many, many different ways with ideas and thoughts and how can we do this and can we pursue this a little bit further. And I am just impressed with our students and with their level of commitment and with what they want to do. Our job, from my perspective on that piece, is we vet those ideas, we look at them, everyone's a good idea until we can't do it. And there are some we can't do, but we do that.
I'm going to call time on this very quickly. I know that all of you can contribute to this, but trying to be a good moderator, this is the speed round here. So what is, Brian, I'll start with you, we'll come back this direction. What is the single thing, you all said everything you said was important, but what was the most important thing that you said in one sentence or two?
Probably recognition that there are lots of ways we can contribute to change the climate, to improve the climate. It doesn't necessarily have to cost money. Obviously, some will. But our job as leaders is to select among them and to begin with the low-hanging fruit, where in fact it would save money and yet we can improve the climate.
Thank you. Nancy?
I think the most important thing from my perspective that I said is really about weaving climate impact and climate justice issues into the other equitable development and racial equity issues that a city like Newark, for example, has, rather than seeing it as a separate side thing, but weaving it right into questions of affordable housing or public safety or toxic gardens or health equity or supplier diversity and the ways in which we support local economic development.
Thank you. Fran?
For me, it's the quote that I started with: coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. And we have so much here. We're so blessed. We have a rich abundance of ideas and talent and energy. How do we pull it together? And I think that's the challenge for New Brunswick.
Antonio?
I think for me that as we begin to engage conversations around climate transformation and think about actionable outcomes, that I go back to understanding how acting locally also has resonance globally. And as we engage our students to be able to inhabit this global world, it's important that the globality is a part of the local conversation.
Tony?
And for me, collaboration. Collaboration amongst the different disparate groups, working with each other, seeking that academic advice that we look forward to. We are a university with tremendous, tremendous assets when it comes to knowledge and that knowledge base. Vetting these proposed programs, looking for the funds to try and help us that are external. I think it all comes down to collaboration, respectful collaboration.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all.